Morning. So today we have come to Portland, the Isle of Portland, which is technically not an island because it's connected to the mainland by a causeway, but it's pretty much an island, to be honest.
For those of you that don't know it, we've got Weymouth on the Dorset coast here, and then there's the causeway which leads out to what is known as the Isle of Portland, which is not actually an island. And what we're going to do is we are going to walk around the whole of the perimeter of the island, following the coast path pretty much most of the way. It's about 8 or 9 miles, but it's got a lot of interesting stuff along the way, so follow along.
I always think Portland is a place that's got an air of mystery about it. It's rugged, and it's got, I don't know, there's something about Portland that's intriguing. It's probably partly to do with modern folklore, where there's talks of kind of expansive tunnel systems and secret passages and nuclear bunkers and even submarine pens. There's a lot of kind of tales, but there is a lot of quirky historic features as well. We certainly know there is one cliff tunnel, because I've seen pictures of that, although it's not accessible as far as I'm aware. But one thing it is synonymous with Portland is quarrying. Everywhere you go there's relics of quarrying, and this is no exception. This is one of the inclines that goes from a quarry, and you can imagine the stone being dragged down there underneath that bridge across the way there and carried down. And that's just part of Portland's heritage. And of course the stone has been used in some very notable places. St Paul's Cathedral in London, Buckingham Palace includes Portland stone. So it's gone everywhere, Portland stone. It's been quarried, there's been quarrying on Portland since Roman times. But the kind of formal industry started probably early 17th century. So it's extensively quarried, and we'll see lots of quarrying relics on the way round. And we immediately hit the first interesting thing about Portland, and that is the Verne Citadel, which is a fortress built 19th century to protect Portland Harbour. It is now in fact the Verne prison. It was converted in 1949, I believe, to a prison, and probably its most famous inmate, I guess, would be Gary Glitter, would you believe? So I said the Verne Citadel protected the Portland Harbour. It's a substantial citadel, but a short distance away from that is a second relic of war, if you like. This is the Verne High Angle Battery, which is a very short distance away, and the Verne High Angle Battery was a gun placement, had 6 gun placements, which you can see one of them there. So High Angle Battery was actually built in a disused quarry, and the reason it's called High Angle Battery is down to the way it worked. As I say, it had 6 gun posts plus 2 others which I don't think were ever used, but the way it worked is that because ships were becoming more and more protected, armour plating and so on, it was becoming more difficult, so the idea was that with high angle battery they would fire shells steeply up into the air, and they would then drop down on the decks of the ships, which is the most vulnerable part. And that's the way it worked. And there were some outposts along the actual coast, because obviously you can't see the coast from here, but there were some outposts over the top along the coast where people could look out and give the gunners guidance on where they were firing and that sort of thing. It was actually used only for a limited number of years, to be honest, because the coming of torpedo boats and so on, which were more accurate, kind of made it redundant, really, I guess. And so the guns were removed eventually. It was used as a store, though, for ammunition and guns being brought across from France, even into the Second World War. But one thing it does have, which is intriguing, is what are called locally ghost tunnels. And I might need to get my torch out here because it's a bit dark. So this would have actually been I've got my torch out now, by the way, so I don't know if it's bright enough, but it'll help. This would have been the armament store, and as you can see, we've got rails on the ground and various side rooms. Don't know how well it'll come out on the video, but got a bit of a mess in here, unfortunately. So yes, the rails would have obviously been to pull the trucks along to carry the armaments, the shells and so on, out to the gun placements. Just an intriguing place. And in addition to the ghost tunnels where the armaments were stored, there were also larger tunnels where the troops could be protected. And obviously it's covered it over with earth, which protects it further. I just find this an intriguing place. And for once, it's left open. I think they've tried locking it up. Just in England, we tend not to find that. We tend to lock everything up. But interestingly, they've got some lottery funding now to actually improve these places and make something more of them. So it'd be interesting to see what they decide to do. This is another of the ghost tunnels. More side rooms and rails, of course, still in place. It's a bit of a graffiti area now. But it would be, in some ways, I mean, I love coming here as it is. It's just intriguing to wander around these ghost tunnels and see the old artifacts and that. But I guess it makes sense to try and do something more with them, turn them into an attraction of some sort, museum or something, I don't know. Time will tell, I guess. So that's the Verne high angle battery. Yeah, you can see on there, the bottom left hand corner, how the guns were used, and those 6 gun placements. Anyway, so we've only just started this walk and there's already stuff to see. There's so much on this walk. In fact, there is so much stuff of interest, and some of it's pretty quirky as well. It's right up my alley. There is so much stuff on this walk that although it's only probably be 8 or 9 miles, I would think, but there's so much stuff to see that I think I may well have to split this video into 2. I mean, it could be, I could do one long video, I suppose, or I might have to do 2 shorter ones and split it in half. I don't know yet. See what happens when I get to the end and get to the processing of it. But it's a great walk, so there's some really interesting stuff to look at, and some of it's quirky and mysterious, which I love. So we're coming out onto the east coast of Portland. You can see across the way the cliffs of Dorset. Such a great view. Did I say Portland is rugged? If I didn't, it is. There's quite a lot of rocky, walky bits around, like this, and it's not dry either, because we've had some rain recently, so it makes these slopey walks quite tricky. So from here you can see Portland Harbour, or the breakwaters of Portland Harbour. That was built, Portland Harbour was built kind of mid 1800s. At the time it was built, I think it was the largest man-made harbour in the world in terms of sea area within the harbour confines. It's still one of the largest even now, and it was a naval base until 1995 when it was sold off. Famous now, I guess, because it's where the Bibi Stockholm, the asylum seekers boat, block of flats on water, is based, although you can't see it from this angle. So that's Portland Harbour, which obviously Portland is well known for its naval base. And some amazingly clear cliffs in the distance over there. That's another relic of the quarrying age, the old engine shed. There was a railway. In fact, there's a railway across to Portland from the mainland, and it used to run along into the quarries, of course. And that's where the engines were stored. Another interesting fact about Portland: at one time there used to be 3 prisons on Portland. We've already seen one, the Verne prison. There is a young offenders institution, which is what we're just passing now, and in addition to that, at one time there used to be a prison ship based in Portland Harbour. Interesting fact. Down there, another relic of war, I guess. There used to be a firing range. I don't know if that would be very visible. And Portland Harbour in the distance. This always intrigues me. It's like a chimney. I suspect it's probably a breather hole for quarries down below, but I'm not sure. Never been able to really find out what that is. Anyway, we are going to drop down off of the top road now. The coast path drops down to the lower level, so where this is heading down towards East Weir, which is where all the quarry workings would have been on this side. We're still dropping down off the cliff top down to East Weir. Ahead of us is what would have been the end wall of the firing range, rifle range, that I talked about earlier, and over in the distance you can see Portland Harbour, and beyond that of course is Weymouth. And we're going to be dropping down to this lower level and walking along what was the old railway line. We're not quite down to sea level, but I've reached the old tramway where the railway used to go along here. I think we'll follow that. Another relic. I think it's a relic, I'm not sure. Another interesting fact, incidentally, about Portland is that below Portland is one of the largest stores of natural gas, I think, in the world. I'm not sure. Apparently it's 1.5 miles down. Interesting. I guess we're betwixt and between. We're halfway between the top of Portland and the sea. And we're still on the tramway, heading south. I actually think I'm going to do one of my detours to explore again. I'm going to drop down to nearer the sea, which is down this rough track. More relics. And usually there's a seat. Oh wow. That's a surprise as well. A little memorial garden. Wow. We are almost down the bottom. There, of course, there are more relics. Including what was once a derrick, which is a crane, basically, a jib, a crane, by which they would have lifted the rocks out onto boats. And what's in front of me is obviously what was a rudimentary quay for the boats to moor at. So I've now come all along the foreshore and I've reached Church Oak Cove. And I love Church Oak Cove. I think it's one of my favourite places, to be honest, especially, well, on the coast at least. It just intrigues me. There is so much mysterious going on at Church Oak Cove. I'm going to detour before we go down on the beach. I'm going to detour inland, pick up a couple of those. But there's two things you can see in this, two castles. We've got Pennsylvania Castle over, I think it's over there, isn't it? And you've got Rufus Castle there. Both have their stories. Rufus Castle is also known as Bow and Arrow Castle. Not quite sure why. I guess they use bows and arrows? I don't know. So Bow and Arrow Castle, or Rufus Castle, is named after, well, unsurprisingly I suppose, William Rufus. What we see here is not the castle that he had really, because this one dates, I think, from the 15th century, but it's fairly ruined now. The other castle, which is Pennsylvania Castle, which is now a hotel, used to belong to the Penn family. The Penn family were, well, Pennsylvania in America is named after the Penn family, and this goes back to colonial days, I think, when I think it was William Penn, I'm not sure, one of the Penns, I believe William Penn, was Governor General of Pennsylvania, and hence it took his name as the name of the state. And the castle obviously had the Penn name as well. Penn name. Sorry, just realised I did a pun then. Yes, anyway. So there's two castles looking down over onto Church Oak Cove. And obviously they both have their histories. But the Penn family have more interesting, quirky stuff around here. So I will show you that and tell you about that when we get there, because we're detouring slightly inland so that I can reach those things. So we're going up here. Up close and personal with Rufus Castle and its entrance. So the first thing of interest here is an old church, the ruins of St Andrew's Church. So obviously the doorway. And the church itself was down there, but it is no more. But there's a story behind that. So this church was seemingly doomed from the start. It was built originally in 1100 by Benedictine monks, but there was a fire in the 13th century. It's twice been targeted by French raiders. There was a landslip in the 17th century. There was another landslip in the 18th century where half the graveyard disappeared down the hillside. And it was also damaged by bombing in World War II as well. So eventually it was left to ruins, and some of the stone was used to build another church in the middle of Portland rather than on a coast that keeps on subsiding. And up the top we got Pennsylvania Castle showing its head. But there's another interesting thing or story about this church. They call it the Pirates' Graveyard because some of the graves have the skull and crossbone carved on them. That story may or may not be true, because apparently carving skull and crossbones into graves was not that unusual. I think it was kind of a symbol of death, really. But that's the story. But the other thing I wanted to show you, unfortunately I can't, because you can no longer get to it. But in here and even I wouldn't want to clamber over this wall because there's no way of getting through there, it's subsided. But in here, over through, you can see some cliffs here. To the left of that was a structure. I can't see it from here, to be honest, but all I do, I've got some older photographs of this, so I'll put up a couple of stills from my previous visits, and so you can see what it was. But it's John Penn's bath. Now John Penn lived at Pennsylvania, he was part of the Penn family, lived at Pennsylvania. In the 19th century, sea bathing was becoming popular, but John Penn didn't really want to go all the way down to the sea at Church Oak Cove, which is down there. You can see the sea. He didn't fancy that, so what he did is he had a bath built, a stone bath built in the woods there, or the woods now, they probably weren't in his day. And the idea was that his servants would bring water, seawater, up from the beach in buckets, and fill his bath with seawater so that he could sit in his bath and look out to sea through a window. Obviously trees have grown up around it now, but I assume in those days there were no trees. The only thing is he wasn't so switched on as he thought he was, because unfortunately he built the bath on ground that he didn't actually own. It was common ground, and so the authorities insisted that he pay to use it, which he never did. He was so annoyed he just abandoned the idea. I bet his servants were glad of that, because I wouldn't fancy trudging up from the coast with buckets of seawater for somebody. But that's a quirky fact. I'm sorry I can't show you it, but hopefully the stills will tell the story a little bit. But now there's another quirky thing down here, because I think that's pretty quirky. That's about as quirky as it gets to me, somebody having a bath built 3/4 of the way up a cliff and then making the stupid mistake of putting it on common ground and never getting to use it. Crazy. So the next quirky thing is up here, and it may not look much, but trust me, it is interesting and mysterious, and I love it. It's in there. I've got to crouch down to see this, and I'm going to need a torch as well. Oh, crikey. Too old for this. Oh. Right. Don't know if this will come out very well. It is very dark. The fact that there is water down here is actually quite appropriate, because this is an underground reservoir or cistern, I suppose. There are rumours that it dates back to Roman times, but that's never actually been proven. More likely it dates from the 1900s, possibly early 1900s. There used to be a cafe down on the beach at Church Oak Cove, and it's thought maybe it serviced that with water. You can see there's rock pillars holding up rock, and interestingly it's full of water. It's usually dry in here, although it gets muddy underneath. But anyway, I think that's pretty quirky. Gets to an underground reservoir or cistern, and the mystery is, what's it about? When was it put in? Who was it for? One of those fascinating things, I think, and I love that. And now I've got to clamber back out again. Right, so now I think it's time to drop down onto Church Oak Cove Beach and have some lunch, I think. And it's got warm. We're heading down there. Yes, there's another bit of controversy as well, I think, because I believe they closed up the toilets. And I think people don't want them closed. Anyway, we're coming out onto the beach. It's always intrigued me, Church Oak Cove, partly because the beach huts have these little kind of walls. They have their own little gardens that they built, which is quite interesting. You don't seem to see that very often. But yes, a lovely beach this is. And it's just got that air of mystery. Maybe it's around two castles above it, the church that's subsided and ruined, the underground cistern, John Penn's bath and his arrogance or stupidity, whatever it was. I don't know what it is, but something just generates an air of mystery here. and I love it. It's right up my alley. Anyway, see if we can find somewhere to sit and have lunch. A very nice lunch spot. Now we've got to head off out, and of course when you're down the bottom the only way is up. Partway up. Such a lovely beach. A good view of Rufus Castle from here against the skyline. John's Penn's Bath is somewhere in amongst that lot. Pennsylvania Castle up over the top, can't see it, but we're carrying on up. And the shape of these rocks and the evenness of them, I'd say they've been quarried and left. That one looks like it even might have had a rail inserted on it. And these are the same, all similar shape, similar size. They must have been cut out, I think, and never used. But we're still progressing along the coast path, heading south. So briefly had to detour across up onto the road. It's where the coast path goes. I think we probably can scramble along the actual coast itself, which normally I would have a go, but decided I'd be good today and follow the actual coast path, which took me up onto the road and along the road a short time, and I'm now dropping back onto the edge of the coast again. Somebody going in the water down there by the looks. Interesting. It's a rugged coast. And we're still on East Weir. I'd say that's a chunky ship out on the horizon. I don't know if you can see, but kind of out there. Doesn't seem to be moving very fast. And as around this little bit of rocky outcrop, you can see the well, not the halfway point, but the farthest south point of Portland, and you can see the lighthouse. So that's not the halfway point, but at that point we go round and head back inland again, start heading north again up the west side. And there's a lot more relics of the quarrying industry here too. Loads more quarried stone. So we're coming up towards Portland Bill with its lighthouse on the point over there. In fact, there are 3 lighthouses at Portland Bill. They're all here. You can see all 3 of them. said at the beginning of this trip that we might have to split the video into two halves, so this is a good time to do it. I think we're actually over halfway, but the west side of Portland is straighter and slightly shorter than the other side, but no less quirky for that. This is a good point to stop part one of the video, and we'll pick this up again in the next one. So this is just to say thanks for following me, walking with me, and thanks for watching, and we will see you again in the second half. Till then, this is me, the Dorset Rambler, saying see you soon. So the next bit of Portland quirkiness is coming soon. Dropping down the other side, you can now see Chesil Beach clearly, and I never know actually whether this is functional, or whether it's just kind of something art. This is probably the most famous